Welcome. Last week we were talking about evidences for the existence of God. And so this week I want to talk about evidences for why the Bible is true. 2 Timothy 3:16 through 17 says, "All scripture is God-breathed and is useful for teaching, rebuking, correcting, and training in righteousness, so that the servant of God may be thoroughly equipped for every good work." So, some evidences for why we can believe that this is true. When historians look at a document and decide if it is historically reliable, they take it through 3 tests. And the first test is the internal test. They check to see if the document contradicts itself. Because obviously, if a document says, "The sky is always only evergreen," and then later says, "The sky is always only ever blue," that is a contradiction. And so obviously that document is not reliable. The Bible, any of the things in the Bible that appear to be contradictions can actually be cleared up with studying the language and in looking at what the original word meant and the historical context. All of those contradictions can be cleared away. And the Bible actually has less difficulties than just about any other historical document. And so it passes that test really well. The second test they do is external. They see if the document if there's anything outside of the document that can support it, like other historical documents or archaeology. And something that's really cool to study is all of the archaeology that supports the Bible, all of the things that have been found that verify the Bible. And in the description of this video, I'm going to include the link to the Sunday school lesson again that I did on this topic because it's more full and has more resources there, and also the link to a YouTube video on archaeological finds that have supported the Bible. They're really cool. I will share with you the story of William Ramsey. He was an atheist who spent years trying to disprove the book of Acts in the Bible. And he found, though, however, that his archaeological digs, where he was trying to disprove the book of Acts, they actually only confirmed the book of Acts. And he ended up concluding that Luke was one of the most accurate historians. And William Ramsey became a Christian. The third test they do is the bibliographic test to see how well the material was passed on. So if the original is the same as what we have today. There's an example in The Case for Christ by Lee Strobel. He gives the example of playing telephone. And he says, suppose I was to whisper to 2 kids, right? This is a weird game of telephone. So I'm going to whisper to 2 kids, and those 2 kids are going to each whisper to 2 more kids, and so on and so on and so on. So we have like a ton of kids. And let's say at the end of this game of telephone, I ask all the kids to tell me what they heard, and there's a bunch of random answers. That would be bad. But suppose all of the kids said Jesus is Lord. You would conclude then that the original message was Jesus is Lord and that it had been passed on accurately. With the Bible, there are 24,000 copies of the Bible in Greek and Latin, and compared to other historical things. So 24,000, and they all say the same thing. That's an important point. There we go. That's a little bit better. Okay, you can kind of see this, but this right here is taken from the Case for Christ, and this is the number of copies of the Jewish War by Josephus, and then Plato's writings, the Iliad, and then this is the New Testament, and they all say the same thing. Which book would you say is most historically reliable? This one. Historians don't doubt these. So why would anyone doubt this? The Bible's accurate. Also, historians will take into account the time span, because the longer the time span between the original event and then when it was written down, the more likely that myths developed. But with the Bible, the Gospels were written 30 to 50 years after Jesus died. And the Iliad was written 500 years after the original event. And his stories, which was written by Cornelius Tacitus, was written 1,000 years after the original event. And both of those are considered accurate by historians. So, the Bible's true. It's accurate. But is it divine? Is it from God? That, I would say yes. And why? If the Bible is full of all of these different prophecies that were very precise, written years before the prophecy was fulfilled, and they came true. I'm also going to put a link to another YouTube video in the description of this one that talks about prophecies in the Bible that were fulfilled. But I will take time to share with you one. Ezekiel, he predicted that the city of Tyre, which was a very well-fortified city, had this massive wall, even had so the city of Tyre was here, it had an island city out in the sea that its people could retreat to if something happened. Ezekiel predicted that the city of Tyre would be destroyed, and he described in detail how, including that the city would be scraped clean and dumped in the sea. 250 years later, Alexander the Great conquered Tyre, exactly as Ezekiel described, and then he scraped the city clean and dumped its ruins into the sea to build a causeway to get out to that island city. How cool is that? Just as Ezekiel had predicted 250 years before. So yeah, the Bible is true and the Bible is divine. If you have any interesting evidences or arguments for why the Bible is true, go ahead and comment those. I would love to hear, and you can share with other people because I can't cover them all. And if you have any questions, feel free to comment those as well. And next week we're going to be talking about why Jesus is God. And so if you want to hear that, then go ahead and subscribe to KMB's YouTube channel if you aren't already, and you'll get notified when that video comes out. And then until then, I will see you next week.